You'll cook, you'll serve, and you'll stay in that kitchen where you belong. These are important people, Gloria. The last thing I need is one of them mistaking my mother-in-law for a guest. That was my daughter-in-law on the phone not asking me, informing me that I would be spending Christmas Eve cooking and serving 25 of her most important guests on one day's notice. Cook the food, plate it, clean it up, and stay out of sight while the real people enjoyed it. 62 years old, 3 years living under her roof. And to her, I was never anything more than the woman who makes dinner and disappears before the company arrives. And here is the part Renee had no clue about. The guest she was so desperate to impress that night, a chief executive named Diana Hart, was the exact same woman I would be sitting across from in Miami that same week, to sign a deal worth $2.4 million. So while my daughter-in-law was ordering me to hide in her kitchen like the hired help, I was about to walk in and become her most important client's brand new business partner. My name is Gloria Harmon, and stick around, because the way this blew up in her face still makes me grin every single time I tell it. If you love a story where someone finally gets exactly what is coming to them, go ahead and hit subscribe. Then drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. I read every single one. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in that house in the first place. I had a home of my own once. A modest house I lived in for more than 30 years. The same house where I built a whole life with my late husband, Edward. Every room held him. The kitchen where we used to dance while something burned on the stove. The little garden out back that he planted for me one spring. The living room where we watched our son grow up. After Edward passed, that house became my quiet refuge, the last real thread connecting me to the life we had shared. 3 years ago, Derek called me. Renee had just had their second baby, and she was completely overwhelmed. "Just a few weeks, Mum," he pleaded. "She's drowning, and we need you. The kids keep asking for Grandma. I love my son with everything I have, and I love those grandbabies more than my own life." So I packed a bag for 2 weeks. 2 weeks became a month. A month stretched into a season. The guest room stopped feeling temporary, and they started calling it Mom's Room. It sounded affectionate, but I knew that space had been promised to something else before I arrived. In the end, I was simply more useful than whatever plan they had set aside. Then one night they sat me down. Derek took both my hands, the same way he used to when he was a little boy. "Mum, you have always been there for us. You sacrificed everything for me growing up. You moved here. You take care of the kids every single day. We couldn't do any of this without you. You are the heart of this family." Renee's eyes went soft and wet, right on cue. "We have this incredible business opportunity," she said. "One that could change everything for the children. It would give Derek the stability he has dreamed of his whole life. But we need your help one more time." They never pushed me outright. That was the genius of it. They simply reminded me, over and over, how much they needed me. How the house was far too big for one grieving woman. How Edward would have wanted his only son to succeed. How selling it and putting the money into their business would be the truest proof of my love. The last sacrifice that would guarantee my grandbabies never struggled the way Edward and I once had. Derek looked at me with those same childhood eyes and said, "You have always put me first, Mom. This is how I finally build something solid for our family. Don't you want to see me succeed? Don't you want to know your grandkids are safe? Because of you, they knew exactly where to press. My love for him, my terror of failing him, my deep, aching need to be the mother who always provides, even when it cuts." Every word came wrapped in gratitude and quiet guilt. How could I cling to a house full of yesterday when my only child's future was supposedly on the line? Because I loved my son more than I loved those old walls, I sold it. Once the sale closed, the temporary stay quietly turned permanent. There was no home to go back to anymore. I moved into that guest room for good. Here is what a normal day looked like. Up at 6, making Derek's breakfast before he left for work, because Renee never ate before 10. I drove both children to school, because she always had early calls. Back home, I started the laundry, ran to the store, and somewhere around mid-morning the text would land. "Grab the dry cleaning too. Ticket is on the counter. And do not mess it up this time, Gloria." I handled it, every single time. Home by noon, only for Renee to stroll in around 2, walk straight past me without a word, pour herself a glass of wine, and snap. This kitchen looks like a pigsty. What exactly have you been doing all day, maid? She started calling me the help more and more openly. At first it was muttered under her breath. Then it grew loud enough for the children to hear. Kids, go ask the housekeeper what's for dinner. In front of guests, she would heave a dramatic sigh and say, honestly, without Gloria the maid, I would never get anything done. Every correction carried a little blade in it. You fold towels like an amateur. No wonder your own house fell apart. Stop hovering, Gloria. You are not their mother. You are the live-in nanny we pay in room and board. The cruelty kept climbing. Cold commands turned into open humiliation. She would bark at me like I was hotel staff. Gloria, my coffee, now, and get it right this time. If I dared to speak at dinner, she would cut me off. We don't need input from the help. Once, when I left one of the children's toys in the hallway, she screamed in front of the kids, "You are useless. I should have left you in that empty house instead of dragging you here. At least then I wouldn't have to look at your pathetic face every day." I did not fight back. Not really. Because I had already seen what she was capable of when I did. It happened about 6 months after I moved in for good. I walked into the playroom one afternoon and caught Renee tipping children's medicine into the little one's juice cups. "They are too loud," she said, flat as anything. "This knocks them out so I can finish my calls." My blood turned to ice. I crossed the room, took the bottle out of her hand, and told her it was dangerous. She erupted. "Who do you think you are, you nosy old woman? These are my children. Stay in your lane, or I will put you right back on the street where I found you." The venom in her voice, the way she looked at me like I was nothing, it frightened me. Not for myself, for the grandbabies. If I pushed too hard and she threw me out, who would stand between her and those 2 little ones? From that day on, I stopped arguing. I quietly took over almost everything for the children, feeding them, bathing them, bedtime stories, school runs, doctor visits, all of it, so they would never again be at the mercy of her shortcuts. I swallowed every insult, every degrading remark, every time she treated me as something lower than the furniture. I bit my tongue until it nearly bled, because those 2 small faces were worth more than my pride, more than my dignity, more than the whole life I had given up. She thought that was the sum of me. She had no idea what I was actually building. And here is the part that took me the longest to understand, because it was worse than plain meanness. Renee worked in public relations. Her entire brand, the story she sold to the whole world, was a single line. "I do it all. Career, home, 2 kids, a husband. I handle everything." But she did not handle it. I did. And the better I ran that household, the more her shiny image started to crack. So she had to shrink me. If I was only the maid, then she got to stay the queen. Every wrong name, every public jab, every Gloria the help doesn't have a real life. None of it was careless. It was deliberate. She was editing the story so she stayed its star. There was one more thing pressing on her that month. For 4 months, she had been promising her bosses that the Pinnacle Group contract was a done deal. It was not. That Christmas dinner was never a celebration. It was her last, desperate move to save her own career. Renee was not cruel because she hated me. She was cruel because I was the easiest thing in her life to blame, and the one person she was certain could never walk away. Now let me tell you what I was really doing during those 3 years. Renee once scooped up a thick stack of my business mail and dropped it straight into the recycling. "I cleared your clutter," she said, with that little laugh, as if she had done me a favor. That clutter was my company's quarterly report. Those phone calls I took in the car on the way home from school drop-off, window cracked, voice low. I was closing catering deals with resorts up and down the East Coast. That laptop glowing on the kitchen table at 11 at night, long after the house had gone quiet. I was reviewing contracts and signing off on payroll for 50 people. Let me just say it plainly. I own a company. It is called Stellar Events. My husband started it more than 20 years ago. A tiny catering operation he ran out of our garage on weekends while he worked his regular job. When Edward passed, he left it to me. Not to Derek. He knew our son had his own dreams, and he never wanted to hand the boy a business he had not asked for. "This one is yours, Gloria," he used to say. "Something that belongs to you, if you ever need it." By the time it came to me, it was barely more than a name and a second-hand van. So I took $5,000 I had scraped together, and I built it into something, quietly. I never told Derek. I never breathed a word of it inside that house. I grew it carefully, and I built a team strong enough that it could run without me standing in the kitchen every day. Today, Stellar Events has 50 employees, 3 commercial kitchens, and a management team so solid I can run the whole thing from my phone or from that kitchen table at midnight. We handle 5-star resorts, corporate retreats, and charity galas where the mayor and half the city council show up. I was nominated for a James Beard Award last year. I never said one word about it under that roof. And there was more coming. Forbes had written a feature on me. The headline read, "Gloria Harmon, the Invisible Executive. How one woman built a catering empire while living inside a life that wasn't hers." It was set to go live the morning after Christmas. I had approved the final version 2 weeks before Renee ever made that desperate phone call. I had even built my whole trip around the publication date. That was not luck. That was me choosing the moment. Because here is where it all comes together. I had a meeting in Miami right after Christmas. A contract worth $2.4 million. Exclusive catering rights for 5 luxury resort properties along the coast. And the woman who had been chasing my company for 2 solid years to sign it. Diana Hart, the chief executive of Pinnacle Group. The same name Renee had bragged about over the phone. The very guest she was so frantic to impress at that Christmas dinner. And it got sweeter still. Renee's own public relations firm already represented Pinnacle. She had been managing Diana's account for months, fighting to keep that contract and keep her job. When she planned the dinner, she texted Diana every last detail, and she added one charming little note. "My mother-in-law Gloria will be handling all the cooking. She is truly incredible in the kitchen." Renee had spent months grooming that relationship. She had handed Diana my first name like it was a selling point. She had no idea she had just gift-wrapped the final piece of the puzzle and set it right in my hands. I zipped my carry-on shut, pressed the latch until it clicked, and turned off the light in the guest room, the room they had given me in exchange for the home I had handed over. My real life had been thriving the whole time, just 20 minutes and a world away, in an office none of them had ever once bothered to picture. I called Renee back, not to negotiate, to tell her, no. She picked up fast, already triumphant, like she had won. "Good. You came to your senses. Be here by noon." "I am not coming, Renee. I have a business trip. My flight leaves at 8 tomorrow night." A pause, then a laugh, sharp and ugly. "A business trip? What business?" I let it sit. She filled the silence the way she always did, by swinging. "Derek is going to be so disappointed in you. You know how he gets when you make things difficult." I said nothing. "These are serious professionals, Gloria. They are not going to be impressed by whatever little hobby you have been calling work." Still nothing from me. So she reached for the big one. "If you walk away from this, do not expect to come back to this house. It is not like you have anywhere else to go anyway, do you?" There it was. The thing she had been holding over my head for 3 years, finally said out loud. "Nowhere else to go," I repeated, slow and quiet. "You and Derek talked me into selling the only home I had left of my husband, to bankroll the business the 2 of you were going to build. You took my nowhere else to go, Renee. Do not you dare wave it in my face now." She went quiet. "And before I leave, I am putting a list on the kitchen counter. 3 emergency catering companies, all with 24-hour lines. That is far more consideration than this deserves." I hung up. 2 minutes later, Derek texted, "Mom, please, Renee is really upset." I read it once. I set the phone face down and called my ride. The next evening, first from the departure gate, and then later from my hotel bed in Miami, I watched the whole thing fall apart through her messages. 6 o'clock. The kitchen is empty. There is nothing in the fridge. People are arriving in an hour. 7:23. We are ordering pizza. Pizza, Gloria. Do you understand what you have done? 8:15. Papa John's just showed up. 5 boxes on the good Waterford crystal. 9:33. Diana left after 20 minutes. Everyone went home early. Mum says you are dead to her. I read every one of them. I answered none. The following evening, down in Miami, Diana Hart walked into our pre-dinner meeting a full hour late, looking wrung out. She still had no idea who I was. To her, I was just the caterer she had been chasing for 2 years. And she could not stop talking about the bizarre night she had survived. I just had the strangest Christmas Eve of my life, up in Connecticut, she said, shaking her head. The hostess spent the entire evening blaming her mother-in-law, relentlessly. Gloria didn't show up. Gloria is unreliable. Gloria has always been the problem. By the time the pizza arrived, I felt like I knew the woman. I smiled. I nodded. I let her talk. She had handed Diana my name herself. She just had no idea what name she was handing over. The next morning, we were in the Pinnacle boardroom. The contract sat on the table between us. My presentation was going perfectly, right up until Diana's assistant walked in holding a tablet. Miss Hart, you are going to want to see this. It was the Forbes article. It had gone live at midnight. My face filled the screen, and there was that headline running across the top. Gloria Harmon, the invisible executive. Diana read the first name, Gloria. The name she had heard 100 times the night before. Then her eyes dropped to the last name, Harmon. The same name printed on the contract in front of her. She pulled out her phone, scrolled back through her texts, and found the message from weeks earlier. My mother-in-law Gloria will be handling all the cooking. 3 pieces, every one of them handed to her by Renee, all of them clicking into place at the same instant. She looked up at me. Gloria Harmon, Renee's mother-in-law. It was not a question. The room went dead silent. Her legal counsel set down his pen. Diana stood, walked to the window, and then she laughed. A real laugh, the kind that bursts out of a person when life hands them a punchline they never could have written. She picked up her phone and dialed. Put it on speaker. She looked at me first, and I gave her the smallest nod. I was not going to stop her. Renee answered warm and bright, her biggest client, calling the day after Christmas. Diana, Merry Christmas. I am so glad to hear from you. Renee. Diana's voice was calm and flat. I was very disappointed by the other evening. I will be pulling Pinnacle's account from your firm, effective immediately. I do not work with people who cannot tell the difference between a housekeeper and a chief executive. 2 seconds of pure silence on the line. Then, small and cracking, I. What? Diana. I do not understand. Diana ended the call. She turned to me and held her hand out across the table. Miss Harmon, let's sign this contract. I signed. They poured champagne. And Diana posted the news on LinkedIn, tagged to my company, to the Forbes piece, to Pinnacle Group, not to Renee. There was nothing left to tag her to. Within the hour, the whole industry was talking. I thought it was over. It was not. My phone rang at 9:30 that night. Renee. I let it ring twice, then answered on speaker and set it on the hotel desk. What is this, Gloria? Her voice shook with fury. Diana just posted about signing a $2.4 million contract with your company. You have a company? An entire catering empire? And you never said one word to us? You let me brag about my amazing mother-in-law who cooks, like some sad little housewife, while you were sitting on a gold mine this whole time. I kept my voice flat, almost bored. Yes, I own Stellar Events. I have for years. Her laugh was ugly. You hid it from your own family, from your own son, after everything we have done for you? We took you in when you had nowhere to go. We gave you a roof, a room, a seat at our table. Derek cut in, his voice thick with that same practiced guilt I had heard 1,000 times. Mom, this is beyond selfish. We opened our home to you. We let you live with us for 3 years. We gave you a purpose after Dad died. And this is how you repay us? Hiding a successful business and refusing to help your own blood? You owe us, Mom. You owe me. After all the years we sacrificed for you. I cut him off, calm and razor sharp. Sacrificed for me. You begged me to sell the only home I had left of your father so you could fund a business idea that was already failing. I gave up 30 years of memories because you told me it was the only way to prove I loved you. I became your live-in maid, your unpaid nanny, your personal cook. I woke at 6 every morning while the two of you slept in. And you want to talk to me about debt? Renee jumped back in, her voice climbing. We gave you a family again. The kids call you grandma every single day. We included you. We never charged you rent. We never made you feel like a burden. Included me? One short, cold laugh. You called me the help in front of your own children. You made me eat, standing at the counter like a servant. You told your friends I was the live-in nanny you kindly let stay. That was not inclusion, Renee. That was ownership. And no, I do not owe you a single dollar or a single opportunity from my company. Edward left it to me for a reason. He knew exactly what kind of son he had raised. Derek's breathing went heavy. So, you are going to abandon your own grandkids now? After everything? If you do not step up and help us with this company, transfer some shares, give us a loan, something, then you can forget about ever seeing them again. We will make sure of it. Blood is thicker than water, Mom. You taught me that. I had been waiting for the grandkid card. I actually smiled at the phone, even though they could not see it. As a matter of fact, I already took care of that, I said, even and steady. This afternoon I hired a full-time live-in nanny and housekeeper, top agency. She starts next week. I am paying her salary and her benefits, every cent of it. She will handle the childcare, the cooking, the cleaning, the school runs, for the children only, not for the two of you. You and Renee can finally handle everything on your own, exactly the way you have always told the world you do. For 3 full seconds there was stunned silence. Then Derek exploded. You selfish. After everything we have done for you, you ungrateful, cold-hearted. And that was the moment something inside me finally snapped. Ungrateful? My voice cracked like a whip. I am ungrateful. Let me remind you exactly what I survived in that house. I sold my home, the last place on earth that still smelled like your father, because you cried and swore it was the only way to prove I loved you. I woke at 6 every single morning to make your breakfast while your wife slept until 10. I drove your children, washed your laundry, cooked every meal, ran every errand. I let Renee call me the maid, the help, Gloria, the housekeeper, in front of guests, and in front of your own kids. I caught her pouring medicine into their juice so they would go quiet during her calls, and when I stopped her, she screamed that I was a worthless old woman who belonged on the street. And you, my only son. You watched all of it. You never once told her to stop. You never once stood up for me. You let her treat your own mother like garbage because it was easier for you. You used my love for those babies to keep me chained to that house. You are a selfish, spineless, ungrateful son, a disgrace to the father who raised you. Edward would be ashamed of the man you have become. The line went dead silent. I could hear Derek breathing hard, but for once, he had nothing to say. Renee tried to claw her way back in, shrill and desperate. You cannot talk to us like... I cut her off, my voice ice now, low and perfectly steady. Listen to me very carefully, both of you. I have 3 years of documentation from inside that house. The messages, the recordings, Renee's own words, over and over. And I will never forget what I watched her do to those children that afternoon in the playroom, the day I took that bottle out of her hand. I made certain it never happened again, because from that day forward I handled everything for them myself. But I remember all of it. If either of you comes after me, if you try to keep my grandchildren from me, I will report Renee for child endangerment, and I will put every bit of that documentation in front of the people who can act on it. I will make sure every public relations client she has left, Pinnacle Group included, learns exactly who she really is. And with the lawyers my company can afford, I will make sure those children are protected from her for good. Do not test me. I heard Renee's sharp breath. Derek said nothing at all. I waited 2 full seconds. Then I ended the call. 3 weeks later, I was home, sleeping in my own bed every single night, for the first time in 3 years. And then a food blogger published a health code complaint against my company. A contamination scare, completely invented. The address listed for the so-called event was Derek's house, where I have never catered a thing in my life. I did not panic. I called my attorney, and I waited. Because here is what was happening on Renee's end. That same week, she was alone in her office, well past 11 at night. Pinnacle was gone. Her bosses had scheduled a review. 2 more clients had quietly slipped away. Exhausted and desperate, she clicked through tab after tab and pulled up a state health portal her firm had used once before for a restaurant client. The contact field filled itself in automatically with her work email. She typed her lie and hit submit without ever reading the confirmation screen. A young associate named Priya was working late too. She walked past Renee's desk to refill her coffee and saw that screen. Renee's work email. The fake address. Priya took a screenshot on her own phone. Not for me. She did not even know me. She did it to protect herself from whatever Renee was clearly turning into. When my attorney's letter reached the firm the next morning, Priya handed that screenshot to the Human Resources Department. By the end of the day, Renee was fired for cause. No severance. Nothing. Diana sent the blogger a statement that same afternoon, and the retraction ran by morning. She used every tool of her professional life to come after mine, and every single one of them turned around and took her down instead. That is what the end of entitlement looks like. Not some grand showdown. Just a tired woman, an open tab, and a name that filled itself in at 11 o'clock at night. 2 weeks after Renee was fired, Derek called me. He did not defend her. He did not ask me to fix anything or smooth it over. He just said, "Mom, I watched her try to destroy you for 3 years, and I said nothing. I do not even know how to apologize for that." I let him sit in his own silence. I did not rush in to make it easier for him. "Derek, I love you," I told him. "But love does not mean available. Call me when you have done the work." I meant it. He heard it. 6 months later, he filed for divorce. I never asked him to. But a marriage built entirely on Renee, being the woman who had it all together, could not survive the day the world learned that she did not. That was a mess she made on her own. The morning after I signed the Pinnacle deal, I called my head chef, Carmen, who had been with me almost from the beginning. I offered her 15% of Stellar Events, a real stake, paid in over 5 years at a price she could actually manage. The first partner in the company's history. She started crying on the phone. I told her to knock it off or I would take it back. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped it. Marcus, my operations manager, became my chief operating officer. He ran the entire Miami expansion. He finally bought the house his kids had been waiting on. That young woman, Priya, handed in her resignation the week after Renee was let go. It turned out she had been planning to leave for months. I had my attorney send her a gift basket from Stellar Events. "No card," he said. "She will not know who it is from." I said, "That is fine. I will know." The blogger retracted everything within a day and deleted the post. A few weeks later, she emailed asking to interview me about false complaints in the industry. I had my assistant send back one line, "No thank you." And me? I found a place of my own again. A small apartment with good light. I painted every wall a color I chose. I bought furniture. I picked out myself, without asking a single soul. I put a real desk by the window, where I work every morning with coffee I make for me, that nobody will ever call clutter. I hung the Forbes article in the hallway by the front door. Not big, not showy, just where I would catch it on my way out, on the mornings I needed to. My new place smells like coffee and something I could not name for the longest time. I finally figured it out. It smells like mine. Can I ask you something before I let you go? When was the last time someone in your family actually asked what you were building? Not how are you? Not, are you getting enough sleep? I mean, truly asked, what are you working toward? What are you proud of that no one under your roof has ever once wondered about? If you had to think about that for more than 3 seconds, stay with me. This part is for you. Let me tell you where everyone landed. Renee never found another job like the one she lost. Her firm did not just fire her. They also lost the Pinnacle account she had staked her whole reputation on, somewhere north of $600,000 a year. Word travels fast in public relations. The woman whose entire brand was "I handle everything" became the cautionary tale people whispered about at industry lunches. Filing a false health complaint, by the way, is a crime. She paid a fine and avoided worse. But the fine was never the point. The point was that the story she had spent years selling about herself finally collapsed, and there was no one left to blame for it but the woman in the mirror. About 4 months later, a letter arrived, forwarded through Derek. 3 pages, her handwriting, and I could read the shape of it before I read a single word. After everything I did for that family, you could have just helped. I am still your son's wife, or I was, and that should mean something. I read the whole thing standing at my kitchen counter, the same way I used to eat my dinners in her house, standing up. Then I folded it back along its creases and dropped it in the recycling. No reply, not out of anger. I simply had nothing left to say to her. That is the part people miss about moving on. It is not loud. It is quiet. It is a letter in a bin and a cup of coffee going cold while you get back to your morning. Now, I do not call Renee evil. That word lets her off too easy. I call her something more uncomfortable. She was entitled by design. She never sat down and plotted to use me. She simply never thought about me at all. And in a family, that becomes normal fast. Every morning I rose at 6 without being asked. Every dinner I made without a thank you. Every insult I swallowed and turned back into helpfulness. She got a little more proof that this was just the way of things. That my time was free. That invisible people do not push back. But here is the wound that took me the longest to say out loud. Renee was not the one who made me invisible. My own son did. Because silence from someone who loves you cuts so much deeper than cruelty from someone who does not. The only reason Renee could treat me like furniture is that Derek handed her the room and walked away. He told himself he was just staying out of it. But staying out of it, when one side holds all the power, is not neutral. It is a vote. A vote for the person who asks the least of you. So if there is someone you love being treated as less than by someone else you love, and you are staying quiet to keep the peace, hear me. That silence is not you refusing to choose. It is you already choosing the easy one. And I have to be honest about my own part too, because hiding my success was not the noble thing I pretended it was. Some of it was strategy. But a lot of it was that, after years of being told my work was a cute little hobby, I had started treating my own life as though it needed their permission to count. I kept waiting for Derek to notice the laptop and ask, "Mom, what are you working on?" Waiting for Renee to set down her wine just once and say, "Tell me what you actually do." I would have told them everything. I had been holding that door open for years. The morning I stopped waiting was not the dramatic one. It came months before any of this. The day Renee tossed my magazine into the recycling and said, "I cleared your clutter. I fished it out. I smoothed the cover flat. I tucked it into my bag. And I thought, calm as still water, I am done measuring my worth by how little these people bother to look." That is the whole turn, right there. Not revenge, not some master plan. Just deciding to stop performing for a room that had already emptied out. Because here is the truth, I would give anything to have known sooner. I signed a $2.4 million deal before a single person in my family knew my company existed. The Forbes piece was written and locked before Renee made one move. Carmen was already planning her future around it. 50 people had been showing up to work for years because of choices I made at a kitchen table while somebody else's laundry spun in the next room. None of it ever needed their applause to be real. People ask me, "Were you not lucky that Diana Hart happened to be at that dinner?" And yes, the timing was a gift. But I have thought about it a long time, and here is what I believe about the truth. It does not need your help. It only needs time. I did not expose Renee. Renee exposed herself to the one person she most needed to impress, using the very information she had handed over. I was simply the woman who was not in the kitchen. These days, my family is the people who earned the title. Carmen, who cried over 15% of a company she helped build. Marcus, who calls me on Sunday nights just to talk. A whole team that knows exactly what I do, because they do it right beside me. That is what dinner sounds like now. Laughter. people who actually see me. So let me leave you with the one thing I want you to sit with before you scroll away. Is there something you are building right now? Something quiet, something yours, that the people closest to you have never once thought to ask about? Drop it in the comments. One line. Just tell me what it is, because I will read it, and I promise you, I will not pretend I do not see it. And if any part of this story put words to something you have been carrying alone, share it. Not for the numbers. For the person in your life who needs to hear it tonight. Your worth was never up for a vote. You do not need anyone to witness it for it to be true. And you are allowed to walk away from people who only see you when they need something, even when you share a last name. I am Gloria Harmon. I built something real out of $5,000 and a whole lot of mornings nobody watched. I cook for clients now, never for free.